I recently did an annual inspection on my Cirrus SR22 Turbo as my warranty expired. I actually got it right here, so I'm going to go through this and share what it cost to do this inspection, all the issues I found, which is going to be interesting going through this and showing you what they found, and whether I still feel like it's worth owning an airplane after getting the final bill. I actually did a video not too long ago on the cost of owning an airplane, and I just briefly touched over the maintenance. I didn't really go into detail. I probably should have emphasized that this is probably the biggest expense you're gonna have when owning an airplane. So you're gonna go through this, and if you're thinking about owning an airplane, this will give you some insight. All right, so here it is. Gonna go through this. Gosh, what do we have here? Probably almost 20 pages here. So the first thing on here is the cost of the inspection. So when I bought my Cirrus back in 2019, I knew it was expensive to own an airplane. I knew the maintenance was gonna be high. And the annual inspection at that time, I think was around $3,000, which is still pretty expensive. So first of all, I rent my airplane out when I'm not using it. I think you've seen those videos how I'm able to save taxes and I'm able to pay for most of my airplane by renting my airplane. So you can go check out that video. That was a little bit after COVID when I bought the airplane. So inspection went all the way up to $5,699.11. And again, that is before they find anything wrong. So just the inspection itself. All right, so we got quite a few items to cover here. So let's see, we've got also, if you think oil changes on luxury cars are expensive, $207.36 for an oil change. And that, unfortunately, the oil change has to be done with every annual inspection. So I forgot to mention, so when you rent out an airplane, you have to do basically an annual inspection every 100 hours. And that's every 100 flight hours. So fortunately, when I rent out my airplane, I actually am able to charge on when the plane is running. So right when they start the engine and all the way to when they shut it off. So I haven't done the math on it, but I'm guessing it's an extra 10 to 20% above flight time. So that's a good thing, is I can rent it out for, let's say, 120 hours, but then I have to get the inspection with 100 flight hours, right? Okay, so luckily there's some things that they don't charge for. I don't know if they do it because they're nice or if it literally just doesn't take any time, but they did inspect the tires. Maybe that's just part of the cost of the inspection, so no charge there. So I'm still getting familiar with a lot of these things on here. Cap check battery. So I don't know if that's from the cap systems or what that is, but any which way, they checked that. Everything looked good there. The oxygen, it looked like there was something wrong with the oxygen. So the oxygen equipment, they had to do $472.50. So that's just for the oxygen. They said they didn't really see any defects, but there was something they had to do there. I don't even know what that is. And that's the thing about these reports, is they get really long, really extensive, and they have a bunch of jargon here sometimes that I don't quite understand. But any which way, it was completed and done. Looks like the FIKI system, so flying in note ice. So this is a turbo, which means that it's got a de-icing system. So we had to do something to comply. The thing about these things is sometimes you have no choice. It's either by so many years or so many hours that you have to do certain things. So it looks like this was due for something. It just says you have to comply with system inspection, whatever that means. So $378 for that. So man, these things just add up. Let's see, the next thing is, and some of these things are just required. So when they do an inspection, they say required, airworthy, recommended, right? So my thing is that when something's recommended, if it's under like $100, I just do it, right? Because like, you don't want to have an issue for something that maybe you could have been like, man, it was $50. They recommended it. It wasn't a big issue at the time, but it became a big issue, right? So if you're going to spend money on an airplane, I recommend You just, the things that they recommend, just do them. I have had things they've recommended that have been like $500, $1,000, $1,500 that I talked with the mechanic. So when you get these inspections, talk with the mechanic and find out like how big of an issue is this, right? There are some things in the past that have been required by a certain date or amount of hours that you're supposed to have something changed. And I talked through it and they're like, if you go till the next 100-hour inspection, it's not a big deal. Like nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to go, nothing crazy. I've also had the other way where they're like, it's not required, it's recommended, but you know what? You want to be really safe. And so I've spent hundreds or thousands of dollars on recommended items that probably didn't need to do, and I could have saved some money, but why would you risk it, right? So getting into spark plugs, this is a big one. All 12 spark plugs are worn beyond limits. So I don't know if that's something they saw last time they did an inspection, or if those just kind of like wear out pretty quickly, but any which way, I don't know if that's a big deal or not, but they had to replace all 12. So they were very nice and did not charge for labor, which was cool. But the spark plugs themselves were $751.75. So yeah, all 12, no charge for labor, it says. This is, so the induction filters, which is an airworthy issue. So airworthy means that you have to do it in order for it to be airworthy and you're able to fly. So the induction filters have to be done every 3 years or every 500 hours. And the last one was done right at about 3 years. And it says it's due in 12.4 hours. So it's $301. I can't remember if this was a big issue or not, but it's $301 and it's due in 12.4 hours. So, and it's an airworthy issue. So I could save the 12.4 hours or wait until the 12.4 hours, but then I'd have to take it back into the shop and then have it done again, and may as well just do it now, right? If it was like a $5,000 issue or $3,000 issue or, something like that where getting an extra 12.4 hours makes a big difference, that might be different, but any which way, 12.4 hours just didn't make sense to go any further than that. All right, so next item is fuel line clamp. So just a clamp itself, $56.41, just a clamp. Fuel injectors, here's another one, 300 hours or annually, whichever occurs first. So the next one, or the last one was, so we're in January of 25. So the last one was completed July of 23, and looks like it's been over a year, about a year and a half, and it hasn't been quite 300 hours, but it's still due in 32.1 hours. So this is not an airworthy item, but again, time is money. So I think I approved this one and just figured we may as well get it done. 189 bucks. So kind of one of those, probably could have waited a little bit longer, taken it back into the shop, but you know what? 189 bucks, and it only has to be done every 300 hours. So yeah, got it done. What did I say? 189 bucks. Spark plugs, I already went over that one. I don't know why that was on there again. Drain seal, $57.32, just a little drain seal. That's the cost of a oil change, if I'm not mistaken, on most cars. Alt number 2 inspection. So this is to inspect the Alt 2, the alternator. Every 2 years or 500 hours, whichever occurs first. It's been 2.5 years. And so it is over time. $567 just to inspect Alternator 2. Wow. Okay. You know what? Alternator is kind of a big deal. So want to get those inspected, make sure they're running fine, make sure there's no issues, and we complied. We did it. All right. AD, airworthy completed. I have no idea what that is. That is a warranty item. So again, I was about 80 hours into my 100-hour inspection, so I had about 20 hours that I could have waited until my next inspection, but my warranty, my 5-year warranty, because I have a 2019 SR22 Turbo that was, I think December of 19 is when it was actually sold, and so the 5-year inspection's up. So this was a warranty item, so I'll tell you here in a little bit at the end how much these warranty items cost and if it was worth it to do that rather than wait the extra 20 hours. So I don't know the cost of that. So they put 0 on here because it was under warranty. Another warranty, oleo strut, whatever that is, brake pads, right? So if you're renting your airplane, your brake pads are probably gonna have to be replaced more often than if you fly because people just aren't very nice on the brakes. So brake linings were worn a little bit too much, and so they recommended them. So $940.02 for brakes. And I don't know if there's multiple sets of brakes or if that's let's see, brake linings on LH and RH. So left and right. So $940 for 2 sets of brakes. Framing grommet is a warranty item, so luckily that was covered. I just have the total for the warranty items I'll tell you about later. I don't know which each one of these costs. Friction washer, no charge. Horizontal fairings, no charge. TKS fill-up, so basically the Fiki fluid, or TKS fluid is what they call it. $37.50. That's a luxury, if you will. It's not necessarily a maintenance item, but you want to have enough fluid just in case we're in January right now, so to have enough fluid in case of emergency, in case you get into some icing weather, is good to have. And $45 for shipping for parts. Let's see, they wash the aircraft. They didn't charge for that. They give me a washing once a year. Consumables, let's see, what is that? That's lubricants, fluids, cleaning supplies, small hardware, protective tapes and foams, shop towels, and abrasives. Wow, I didn't even realize that they charge for that. I'd read this at least 2 or 3 times, and I think I missed that. $567.25 just for all of those little things. So the grand total of the annual inspection, which again was $56 something for the inspection, and an additional about $5,000. So the total came out to $11,096.36. So I remember, gosh, it was probably 5 years ago, a pilot buddy of mine sent me a bill for an airplane he flew. It was a private jet, I believe. And it was like a $25,000 bill. I can't remember what it was. I can't remember if it was for taxes or what it was. And I was like, holy crap, why would anybody own an airplane and have a $25,000 bill for whatever it was? I can't remember exactly what it was. And here I am. I know this isn't $25,000, but $11,000. That is a pretty big bill considering this inspection has to be done about twice a year, I think, because I think my plane's being flown a little over 200 hours a year. It might be closer to 300. So almost 2, maybe 3 of these inspections a year. So the good thing is that not every inspection is this expensive. So I think, or the inspection itself is that expensive, but the overall, when everything's put into place, I think my previous bills have been closer to about $8,000. I think this might have been my highest. I might have had one that was between 12 and 14. But here's the thing, I've had a warranty, right? So my warranty is expired, and the warranty items on this, I thought it was about $2,000 that between $2,000 and $4,000 that Cirrus covered under warranty. It was $6,500 worth of stuff that was covered under warranty. So technically, this would have cost me $17,500 just for this annual inspection, 100-hour inspection. So the good thing is I think maybe they knew it was my last warranty. So I think some of the things that they may not have pushed to Cirrus, maybe they went ahead and pushed them just because they wanted to help me out a little bit. So there's that to take in consideration. But I imagine that my annual inspections, my 100-hour inspections, are probably going to be right around $10,000 to $12,000 would be my guess. And then this one here, the big one, it could be up to about $18,000. So is it worth it to own an airplane? So I would say overall, yes. The fact that I'm able to get to the depreciation. So if you guys remember, I spent $1 million on this airplane, was able to write off 100% of that in 2022. It's now this year, it was 60 last year, now 40%. Get a tax advisor if you're going to buy an airplane. But this year, Unless Trump changes it, it's going to be 40% bonus depreciation. So if I did it this year, it would be $1 million airplane would be $400,000 in write-offs, which would still be pretty substantial. Back in 22, I was able to write $1 million off, so it saved me about $500,000 in taxes. I will do a video on my end of year of what the airplane cost me in total between renting the airplane and income, and then all the expenses for the hangar, the maintenance, the insurance, the payment, and all of that good stuff. But I would say that overall, I'm pretty far ahead because I'm able to, again, write off the $1 million that I bought for this airplane. And then the fact that I'm able to rent this airplane out and it creates income. So for instance, last month, December, it was in the shop for about 2 weeks, I want to say, for this inspection. And so it only brought about $2,000 to $3,000 worth of income. I believe my cost is right around $8,000 or $9,000, but the month before, I think it brought in somewhere around $12,000, $14,000, right? So I think it averages out to where I get close to my full payment paid for. But I haven't looked at my books for last year, so if you want to see that video, like and subscribe, and I will do that video soon. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I'd recommend from a maintenance standpoint, but yeah, you know, I think when people have issues with the airplanes, usually it's human error, right? So even yesterday, I was supposed to fly to Phoenix, and something told me I should fly commercial. So I get there, and the pilot I flew with said, you know what, there's way too many winds up there, and that's not usual for San Diego, but it was way too windy, and there were questionable, I guess, what do you call it? It was questionable on whether we should go. And so we sat there. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. I needed to be in Phoenix by basically 12 because I had a podcast at 1 o'clock to do. And we sat there for 30 minutes looking at the winds. And we're like, okay, if we have to go right now, we're probably not going to go. There's 40 mile an hour gusts in Phoenix, and even when we took off, it was calm, but then as you get up, there's jets reporting pretty heavy turbulence, like big jets. So with that being said, typically when there's accidents, it's the human error, meaning that you either did something wrong or you flew when you weren't supposed to. So if you guys watch Pilot Debrief, which is a very good accident recap channel, that's usually what happens. And so I'm glad I watched those videos. Even if I hadn't watched those videos, I probably wouldn't have flown. But to me, there was no question I wasn't flying, because if this pilot who has over 1,000 hours that was going to fly with me did not want to fly, there's no way I was going to fly. And he even admitted himself that he gets macho sometimes, and it's kind of kicked him in the butt where he's been flying over mountains and the wind was a little bit too much and he probably shouldn't have gone, and it kind of pushed him down to where they were pretty close to the mountain, you know, within a few hundred feet or something like that. So that's usually one. And then another issue is when people don't take care of their planes. Either it's way beyond when they're supposed to do certain maintenance, right? So if anything here is questionable and you guys have an airplane, I would recommend just getting it done and doing it. You know, airplanes are expensive by themselves. With this airplane, for instance, what is an extra $1,000 to do some of these things that are a little bit questionable, whereas I could just skate and, you know, let it go for a little bit longer, and there could be issues. So I hope this helped you guys. If you guys are thinking about owning an airplane, if you're thinking about buying a Cirrus SR22 or 22 Turbo, this will give you an idea of what it's going to cost you if you decide to buy this airplane or something similar to it. So if you guys want to see more videos in the future, again, I'm going to do one on the profit and loss of my airplane in 2024. So if you guys want to see that video, again, like, subscribe, hit the notification button, and we'll see you on the next video.